Welcome to Monk's Temple. Let's begin by doing something simple. Just pause. Right now. Notice that you're breathing. Notice the space between this word and the next. In that tiny gap, you just touched something most people spend their lives searching for. Presence. And presence is the most powerful force for transformation that exists. Hold that feeling lightly, and let's travel to a highway in Louisiana. November 2025. America is deep in its usual noise. News cycles spin. Political arguments rage. Everyone chooses sides. Everyone is certain they're right. And onto this landscape of constant conflict, something impossible appears. A line of men in saffron robes walks single file along the interstate shoulder. Cars rush past at 70 miles an hour. Big rigs shake the ground. And these men just keep walking. Some are barefoot. Their feet are wrapped in bandages with blood seeping through where skin has cracked on hot asphalt. They carry nothing except a single bowl each. They don't look at the cars. They don't look at people pointing phones. Their eyes are lowered. Their lips are silent. They just walk. This is the walk for peace. 20 Buddhist monks from the Theravada tradition, the oldest surviving school of Buddhism, walking from Fort Worth, Texas to Washington, D.C. 120 days. 10 states. 23 miles per day. No cars. No planes. No hotels. No money. No demands. Just walking. Just silence. Just bowls. This is not a protest. There are no signs. No chants. No political platform. The leader of this walk, Bhikkhu Panikkara, said something that should sit with you. We walk not to protest, but to awaken the peace that already lives within each of us. Think about that. The modern world assumes peace is something you achieve by changing the external world. Pass the right law. Elect the right person. Win the argument. Then you have peace. The monks operate on a different assumption. Peace is not something you achieve. It is something you remember. It is already inside you, buried under layers of conditioning. You don't build peace. You uncover it. This is where psychological insight meets Buddhism. Your mind is like a lake. But it's not still. It's constantly stirred by every thought, notification, worry, and desire. The surface is always choppy. You look at the surface and think, this is who I am. But the monks show something different. Stop stirring. Let the lake settle. The water becomes clear. And at the bottom, there is peace. It was there the whole time. You just couldn't see it through the turbulence. That's what the walk is doing. Demonstrating what a settled mind looks like. Millions of Americans are responding not because they're Buddhists, but because they recognize something they've lost. They see the stillness and remember that they too were once still. Before the world trained them to react. Before they forgot. Let me tell you about one of those Americans. Her name is Diane. A school teacher from Mississippi. She heard about the walk and thought it was strange. She's a Christian, a Baptist who goes to church every Sunday. She didn't know anything about Buddhism. But something made her drive to the highway where the monks would pass. She stood with a small crowd, arms crossed, not sure what she was feeling. When the monks came into view, she later said, the air changed. They moved so slowly. So deliberately. She watched their feet lift and place, lift and place. She watched the lead monk's face, absolutely serene, unbothered by traffic, noise, staring crowd. And Diane started to cry. She wasn't sad. She wasn't happy. She was just overwhelmed by the sight of human beings being so completely, utterly present. She told me, I've been teaching children for 30 years to sit still and pay attention. And I realized I had forgotten how to do it myself. Those monks reminded me. Diane didn't convert to Buddhism. But something shifted. For the rest of that week, she found herself pausing before reacting. Listening more carefully. Eating dinner without the TV on. The monks had awakened something in her that had gone to sleep. This is the first teaching of the walk. Peace is contagious. But not like anger spreads through energy and momentum. It spreads like silence spreads in a noisy room. When one person falls silent, eventually everyone does. When one person becomes still, the stillness spreads. The monks are not trying to convince you of anything. They are simply being what they are. And that being changes everyone around them. If Diane's story resonated, please consider subscribing to Monk's Temple. We explore intersections of ancient wisdom and modern psychology every week. Hit the subscribe button below. It's a small gesture pointing toward peace. Now let's go deeper into what these monks are actually doing. The walk is an ancient practice called the Tanga. In Pali, it means shaking off. Shaking off comfort. Shaking off attachment. Shaking off everything not essential. The Buddha taught this to accelerate spiritual progress. Not because discomfort is good, but because comfort makes us forget. When everything is easy, we stop paying attention. We sleepwalk through life. The monks wake themselves with every step. They wake before sunrise. They chant in the dark. Ancient Pali syllables, sounds chanted for 2,500 years, fill the pre-dawn air. Then they walk for hours in noble silence. This is training in what the Buddha called right speech. And right speech begins with learning when not to speak. Think about your own mind. How many times daily do you feel the impulse to comment, react, judge, share? The Buddhist training is simple. Watch the impulse arise. Watch it peak. Watch it pass away. Don't grab it. Don't feed it. Just let it go. The monks practice this for 10 hours daily, on cracked feet, with cars rushing past, with people staring. They do not speak. They do not react. They just walk. They train the mind to be unshakable. And that training is a gift to everyone who witnesses it. Now I want you to meet someone else along this road. His name is Marcus, and he drives a truck for a living. He's been behind the wheel for 23 years, hauling freight across 38 states. Marcus heard about the monks on a talk radio show where the host was mocking them. Calling them freeloaders. Calling them a spectacle. Marcus is not a religious man. He voted in the last election but doesn't really follow politics. He just drives. But something the host said bothered him. The host kept saying these monks carry nothing and expect others to feed them. And Marcus thought, well, what's wrong with that? If they're not hurting anyone, if they're just walking, why is that threatening? So when his route took him through South Carolina and he saw the orange robes up ahead, he pulled his rig over. This is not easy with a 40-ton truck. But he did it. He got out and just watched. He watched them for about 20 minutes. Later he told a local reporter, "I didn't believe in God, I didn't believe in Buddha, I didn't believe in much of anything except my next paycheck. But watching those men walk, I saw something I couldn't name. It wasn't weakness. It was the opposite of weakness. It was strength that didn't need to prove itself." Marcus went back to his cab and found a brand new pair of wool socks he'd bought at a truck stop in Ohio. Still had the tag on them. He walked over to one of the monks and held them out. The monk stopped, lowered his head, and received the socks in his bowl. No words. No smile. Just a slight bow. Marcus said, "I don't believe in what you believe. But I believe in you." The monk looked at him with eyes that seemed to see all the way through him. And Marcus went back to his truck feeling like he'd just done the most honest thing he'd done in years. This is the bowl. And the bowl deserves its own attention because it is the center of this entire practice. Every monk carries an alms bowl. In Buddhism, this is not just a container. It is a sacred object representing the oldest economy in the world. The economy of generosity. The monks do not carry money. They do not cook. They do not plan their next meal. They walk, and they wait. They place their entire physical survival into the hands of complete strangers. Think about what that requires. Think about the trust. Think about the vulnerability. Every single day, these monks wake up with no idea where their next meal will come from. They have no backup plan. No credit cards. No emergency fund. They have only the bowl and the faith that someone will fill it. This is the practice of dana in Pali, usually translated as generosity. But it's deeper than that. Dana is the recognition that we all depend on each other. That no one is self-made. That every one of us survives because of the kindness of others, whether we acknowledge it or not. Picture this. A gas station parking lot in North Carolina. A woman named Carla pulls in to fill her tank. She sees the monks resting under some trees nearby. She's a nurse. She's been working double shifts for weeks. She's exhausted. She's also deeply in debt and feels like she has nothing to spare. But something moves in her. She goes into the gas station and buys 2 gallons of water and a bag of apples. It's maybe $12. It's all she can afford. She walks over to the monks, feeling awkward, feeling like she doesn't belong here. A monk sees her approaching and stands up. He holds out his bowl. Carla places the water and apples inside. The monk bows. And Carla, for the first time in months, feels something she can't describe. It's not happiness exactly. It's more like relief. Like she just remembered she's part of something larger than her problems. She drives away and realizes she's crying. But they're not sad tears. They're released tears. She gave what little she had, and in return, she received something priceless. She received the experience of connection. This is the psychology of dana. When you give without expectation, something happens in your brain. The constant calculating, the endless weighing of what you get versus what you deserve, it all pauses. For one moment, you are not a self trying to get something. You are just a channel. Generosity flows through you. And in that flow, you touch something real. You touch the part of you that isn't defined by what you own or achieve, but by your capacity to simply be present for another being. The monks understand this. That's why they don't say thank you. In the West, we say thank you to close the transaction. It's the verbal receipt. Thank you means I received, you gave, now we're even. The monks don't say thank you because they're not closing anything. They're keeping the transaction open. They're receiving your gift with full awareness, and by receiving it fully, they're giving you something in return. They're giving you the chance to see your own goodness reflected in their eyes. They're giving you the experience of being a giver, which is one of the deepest joys a human can feel. Let me tell you about someone else you wouldn't expect to find on this road. His name is Harold, and he's 83 years old. Harold fought in Vietnam. He carries shrapnel in his left leg and memories he's never spoken about to anyone, not even his wife of 50 years. Harold lives in a small town in Georgia, and he heard the monks would be passing through. His first reaction was anger. A column of people walking in formation, police escorts, people watching from the sides, it triggered something in him. Too military. Too reminiscent. But Harold's granddaughter, a girl named Maya who's studying religion in college, asked him to take her to see them. She didn't know about his war memories. She just thought it would be interesting. Harold couldn't say no to Maya. So he drove her to the highway, parked his truck, and stood in the December cold, leaning on his cane, watching the road. When the monks appeared, Harold felt his chest tighten. The formation. The silence. The purpose. It all pressed on him. But then something strange happened. He watched them get closer, and he realized they weren't marching. Marching has force behind it. Marching is about arriving somewhere and taking something. These men weren't marching. They were placing one foot after another with no force at all. They were just moving through space, not trying to conquer it. Harold watched them pass, and he later told Maya that he saw something he never thought he'd see again. He saw men who were completely unafraid. Not because they were stronger than everyone else, but because they had nothing to protect. They had no weapons, no armor, no anger. They were vulnerable in every possible way, and yet they walked through the world with more confidence than any soldier he'd ever known. This is the paradox at the heart of the walk. True strength looks like weakness. True power looks like vulnerability. The monks are demonstrating something that modern psychology is only beginning to understand. Security does not come from building higher walls. Security comes from realizing you don't need walls. The things you're protecting. Your reputation, your identity, your pride, they're not actually you. They're costumes you forgot you were wearing. When you let go of protecting them, you become unshakable. On November 19, 2025, near Dayton, Texas, this teaching was tested in the most brutal way possible. A truck hit one of the escort vehicles. 2 monks were seriously injured. One of them, a 58-year-old abbot named Banty Dan Thomason, was airlifted to a hospital in Houston with severe leg injuries. Multiple surgeries. Broken bones. Months of recovery ahead. Now imagine the response our culture expects. In our world, when you're wronged, you have options. You can sue. You can go to the media. You can demand justice. You can become a victim and use that identity as a shield and a weapon. This is so normalized we don't even question it. Someone hurts you, you have the right to be angry, to demand compensation, to make sure everyone knows what happened. That is not what happened. While Banti Dam lay in a Houston hospital bed, his fellow monks kept walking. There were no press conferences. No statements blaming the driver. No talk of lawsuits. When a reporter finally asked one of the monks about the accident, he said simply, "We wish him well. We hope he is not suffering from this experience." Read that again. We hope he is not suffering. Not we hope he pays. Not we hope he's punished. We hope he is not suffering. The monk's first response was compassion for the man who had just put their brother in the hospital. This is not denial. This is not suppression. This is a completely different framework for processing harm. It's the framework of karuna, or compassion, which in Buddhism extends to all beings without exception, including those who cause us pain. Think about the psychological freedom in that. When you hold on to anger, who suffers? You do. The anger lives in your body, raises your blood pressure, disturbs your sleep, poisons your relationships. The person you're angry at often doesn't even know or doesn't care. You're drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The monks understand this. They're not pretending the accident didn't happen. They're not denying that it hurt. They're simply refusing to add suffering on top of pain. The pain is inevitable. The suffering is optional. This story spread through the towns the monks passed. People who heard it were stunned. They'd never seen anything like it. A group of men who were hit by a truck, literally hit, and their response was compassion for the driver. Not performance. Not posturing. Just genuine, unshakable goodwill. For many, this was more powerful than the silence, more powerful than the bowls, more powerful than the bare feet. This was the teaching made flesh. Peace isn't what you feel when everything's going well. Peace is what you are when everything falls apart. Now I need to introduce you to someone who never speaks. His name is Aloka, which means light in the ancient Pali language. He's a small rescue dog with a limp, and he has become the unexpected heart of this entire journey. Aloka walked with these monks on previous pilgrimages in India. He came to America with them. And somehow, this limping dog captured something that all the philosophy and all the teachings could not. Millions of people followed Aloka's journey online. When he needed knee surgery in January 2026, local news stations covered it. When he was reunited with the monks after his recovery in Charlotte, North Carolina, millions watched the video and cried. A dog. A limping dog. Became the symbol of a walk for peace. Why? What is it about Aloka that touched people so deeply? The answer tells us something essential about the human heart. Aloka wasn't performing. He wasn't trying to make a statement. He wasn't Buddhist. He wasn't walking for peace. He was just walking with his friends. He was just present. He was just loyal. And in a world saturated with performance, with people trying to convince you of their authenticity, Aloka was the real thing. No agenda. No brand. No message. Just a dog, limping along beside the people he loved. Let me tell you about someone Aloka touched. His name is Daniel, and he's a firefighter from South Carolina. Daniel has seen things most of us cannot imagine. He's pulled bodies from burning cars. He's held children who didn't make it. He carries trauma in his body that he doesn't have words for. Daniel heard about the walk and dismissed it. He didn't have time for monks and peace marches. He had work to do. But then his daughter showed him a video of Aloka. The little dog limping along the highway, surrounded by saffron robes, completely at ease. Daniel watched that video over and over. He later said it was the dog that got him. If it had just been the monks, he would have kept his distance. But the dog was accessible. The dog was familiar. The dog was something he understood. Loyalty without conditions. Presence without demands. On his day off, Daniel drove to where the monks were camped. He didn't go to see the monks. He went to see the dog. He found Aloka resting under a tree and sat down nearby. He sat there for 2 hours, just watching the dog breathe. And something in him started to unwind. The tension he'd carried for years, the hypervigilance, the constant scanning for threat, it all softened. He later told a friend that watching Aloka sleep was the most peaceful he'd felt since he was a child. This is the genius of the walk. It meets people where they are. Some come for the silence. Some come for the bowls. Some come for the dog. But they all come. And once they're there, something happens. The presence spreads. The stillness infects them. They leave carrying something they didn't have before. Let me tell you about another unexpected encounter. A man named Kevin, who runs a barbecue joint in a small North Carolina town. Kevin is not a spiritual person. He's a cook. He wakes up at 4 in the morning to smoke brisket. He works 12-hour days. His restaurant is famous in the region, and when he heard the monks would be passing through, he had an idea. He decided to close his restaurant for the day and offer free barbecue to anyone who came to see the walk. His staff thought he was crazy. "You're going to give away thousands of dollars of meat? To a bunch of Buddhists?" Kevin just shrugged. He'd been reading about the walk online. He was moved by the image of men who depended entirely on strangers. It reminded him of something his grandmother used to say. Feed people. That's all you have to do. Just feed people. On the day the monks passed through, Kevin's parking lot was packed. He had smokers going. He had tables set up. He had volunteers handing out plates of pulled pork and coleslaw to anyone who wanted it. He didn't ask what anyone believed. He didn't check if they were Buddhists or Christians or atheists. He just fed them. When the monks themselves stopped for their one daily meal, Kevin walked out with a tray of food. He didn't know what monks could eat. He'd prepared vegetables just in case. A monk received the tray in his bowl and bowed. Kevin bowed back, awkwardly, not sure if he was doing it right. And then he went back to his smokers and kept feeding people. Kevin told a local reporter later, "I've been cooking my whole life. But that day, for the first time, I felt like I understood why. It's not about the food. It's about the feeding." This is the practice of Dana showing up in the most unexpected places. A barbecue joint in North Carolina becomes a temple. A cook becomes a monk for a day. The bowl gets filled, and the filler gets filled right back. Let's go deeper into the psychology of why this walk affects us so profoundly. To understand that, we need to look at how your mind constructs the sense of self. Right now, you have a story about who you are. I'm the kind of person who believes this or that. I'm successful or struggling. I'm liberal or conservative. I'm spiritual or skeptical. This story feels solid. It feels like the most real thing about you. But here's what the Buddha discovered 2,500 years ago, and what neuroscience is now confirming. That story is not who you are. It's a collection of habits, memories, and conditioned responses that you've learned to identify with. It's like a movie playing so constantly that you've forgotten you're watching it. You think you are the movie. This is the concept of anatta, or not self. It's one of the most misunderstood teachings in Buddhism. The Buddha wasn't saying you don't exist. He was saying the way you think you exist is a fiction. The solid, separate, permanent self you're trying to protect and promote doesn't actually exist as a thing. It's a process. It's a verb, not a noun. The monks on this walk are demonstrating what it looks like to live from this understanding. Watch them walk. They're not defending an identity. They're not trying to prove they're good Buddhists. They're not performing spirituality for an audience. They're just walking. The self they might have clung to, I am a monk, I am holy, I am special, has been seen through. What's left is just presence. Just awareness. Just walking. Now watch the people who come to see them. Watch what happens in their faces. You can see the recognition. You can see them touching something they've forgotten. For just a moment, their own movie pauses. The constant inner narration, I need this, I should have that, why did she say that, what will they think, all of it stops. And in that stop, they touch something real. Let me tell you about a woman named Patricia. She's a therapist in Raleigh, North Carolina. She works with people who have anxiety disorders. She's trained in all the latest techniques. Cognitive behavioral therapy. Mindfulness-based stress reduction. She knows the research. She teaches her clients to observe their thoughts without getting caught in them. When Patricia heard about the walk, she was curious professionally. She wanted to see this practice in action. She drove out to where the monks were camping and stood at a distance, observing. She watched them sit in meditation. She watched them eat their one meal in complete silence. She watched them walk out the next morning. Later, she told me something surprising. She said, I've been teaching mindfulness for 15 years. But watching those monks, I realized I've only been teaching techniques. I haven't been teaching the real thing. The real thing isn't a technique. It's a way of being. And you can't learn it from a book or an app. You can only catch it from someone who has it. Like a cold. Like a contagion. This is the deepest truth about the walk. The monks are not teaching anything. They're not giving lectures or workshops. They're just being what they are. And that being is contagious. People catch peace from them the way you catch a yawn from someone across the room. It's not intellectual. It's not conceptual. It's direct transmission. Presence to presence. Heart to heart. Think about how you learned to be anxious. You didn't read a book about anxiety. You caught it from the world around you. From parents who were stressed. From news cycles designed to keep you afraid. From a culture that rewards constant vigilance. Anxiety is contagious. Anger is contagious. Fear is contagious. But here's the good news. Peace is also contagious. Stillness is also contagious. Presence is also contagious. You just have to be around people who have it. This is why the walk matters. In a world saturated with fear and anger, the monks are a source of a different contagion. They're walking carriers of calm. And millions of people are coming to be infected. They're standing by the side of the highway, breathing the same air, watching the same feet lift and place, and they're catching it. They're catching peace. Let me tell you about one more person who caught it. His name is Terence, and he's a barber in Georgia. Terence has been cutting hair for 40 years. He's heard every story. He's listened to every argument. His barbershop is a gathering place for the neighborhood, and Terence has seen how divided people have become. Democrats and Republicans don't talk to each other anymore. Neighbors who've known each other for decades now cross the street to avoid conversation. Terence heard about the walk and decided to do something. He packed up his clippers, his scissors, his comb, and drove to where the monks were resting. He set up a chair on the side of the road and put up a sign. Free haircuts for anyone walking with the monks. He didn't know if anyone would come. But within an hour, he had a line. People who had joined the walk for a mile or a day sat in his chair and let him work. He cut hair in silence, the way he'd done thousands of times before. But this time, the silence felt different. It felt full. It felt like prayer. Terence later said, "I've been cutting hair my whole life. But I never understood that it could be meditation. Every snip was a chance to be present. Every customer was a chance to serve. I went there to give something, but I got so much more back." Now let's talk about what happens when the walk meets the full force of modern America. Because it's not all peaceful. It's not all inspirational. There are moments of real friction, and those moments teach us as much as the moments of connection. The monks walk on highway shoulders. This means cars pass them at high speed, sometimes only a few feet away. Some drivers honk in support. Some honk in anger. Some roll down windows and shout things. The monks don't respond. They just keep walking. But the lay supporters who walk with them, the volunteers who coordinate stops and keep everyone safe, they hear everything. In Mississippi, a truck driver deliberately swerved toward the monks, forcing them onto the grass. In Alabama, someone threw a fast food drink from a car window. It splashed across one monk's robe. He stopped walking, looked down at the stain, and then continued without a word. No reaction. No anger. No drama. Just walking. This is the practice under pressure. It's easy to be peaceful when everyone loves you. It's easy to be mindful when the conditions are perfect. But the real test comes when someone throws a drink at you. When someone tries to run you off the road. When someone shouts hate from a passing car. In those moments, everything you've practiced gets tested. The monks are showing us something essential. Peace is not dependent on how others treat you. Peace is what you are regardless of how others treat you. The stain on the robe is just a stain. The shout from the car is just sound. The swerving truck is just a truck. They don't have the power to disturb you unless you give them that power. And the monks have trained themselves not to give it. Let me tell you about a woman who witnessed one of these incidents. Her name is Linda, and she was standing on an overpass in Alabama when someone threw a drink at the monks. She saw the brown liquid splash across the orange robe. She saw the monk stop. She saw him look down. And she saw him keep walking. No fist shake. No angry word. No pause longer than a few seconds. Linda later said that moment changed her life. She'd been struggling with anger at a coworker for months. This woman had spread rumors about her, undermined her at meetings, made her work life miserable. Linda had been rehearsing confrontations in her head, planning what she'd say, imagining the satisfaction of finally letting this woman have it. But watching that monk take the hit and keep walking, Linda saw a different possibility. She realized her anger wasn't hurting her coworker. Her coworker didn't even know how angry Linda was. The anger was living in Linda's body, disturbing her sleep, ruining her peace. She was the one drinking the poison and expecting the other person to die. Linda went home and did something she'd never done before. She sat down and wrote a letter to her coworker. Not an angry letter. A letter wishing her well. She wrote, "I don't know why you did what you did, but I'm letting it go. I hope you're happy. I hope you're peaceful." She never sent the letter. She didn't need to. The writing of it was enough. The shift had happened. The stain had been washed off. This is how the walk works. It reaches people they never meet. It changes lives they never see. The monk who kept walking after being splashed with a drink will never know about Linda. He'll never know that his simple act of non-reaction rippled out and changed someone hundreds of miles away. But it did. That's the nature of practice. You never know who's watching. You never know who's learning from your example. Now let me tell you about a different kind of friction. In a small town in Georgia, the local sheriff initially refused to provide an escort. He told reporters he didn't want to encourage that kind of behavior in his county. He thought the monks were a nuisance, a disruption, maybe even a security risk. Some local residents agreed. There were rumblings about blocking the road, about making it clear these visitors weren't welcome. But something happened. A group of local clergy, Christian pastors mostly, came together. They'd been watching the walk online. They'd been moved by the monks' discipline and simplicity. They saw something in these Buddhists that reminded them of their own tradition's best self. So they went to the sheriff together. A Baptist pastor. A Methodist minister. A Catholic priest. They stood in his office and said, "These are people of faith. Just like us. They're walking for peace. How can we not support that?" The sheriff changed his mind. Not because he suddenly became a Buddhist. Because people he respected, people from his own community, asked him to see differently. When the monks passed through that town, they had a police escort. And lining the road were Christians holding signs that said, "Walk in peace, brothers." One sign read, "Different path, same destination." This is the walk's hidden work. It doesn't just change individuals. It changes communities. It reminds people that underneath all the labels, all the divisions, all the arguments, there's something shared. Something that wants peace. Something that recognizes goodness when it sees it, even in an unfamiliar form. The monks are walking through America, but they're also walking through the walls we've built between each other. And those walls, it turns out, are not as solid as we thought. Let me take you inside one of the most intimate moments of the walk. The daily meal. The monks eat once per day. Just once. And they eat whatever has been placed in their bowls that morning. No choices. No preferences. No special orders. Whatever shows up is what they eat. Picture this scene. It's late morning in South Carolina. The monks have been walking since before dawn. They've covered maybe 12 miles. They stop in a small park at the edge of a town. Word has spread, and dozens of people have gathered. Some have brought food. Some have just come to watch. The monks sit in a line on the grass. They arrange their bowls in front of them. Then they wait. One by one, people approach. A woman places a container of rice in a bowl. A man adds some fruit. A child puts a small bag of cookies in another bowl. All in silence. All with a bow. When everyone has offered what they brought, the monks begin to eat. They eat slowly, mindfully, with full attention on each bite. No talking. No phones. No distraction. Just eating. For the people watching, this is often the most powerful moment. To see human beings eat with such complete presence is shocking. Most of us have never eaten like that. We eat while watching TV, while scrolling phones, while driving, while worrying about tomorrow. We barely taste our food. We barely know we're eating. The monks show a different way. Eating becomes meditation. Nourishment becomes ceremony. Let me tell you about a man named Curtis who watched this meal. Curtis is a chef. He runs a high-end restaurant in Charleston. He's been written up in food magazines. He's cooked for celebrities. He thought he knew everything about food. But watching the monks eat, he realized he'd never really paid attention to eating. He'd been so focused on creating food for others that he'd forgotten to taste his own. Curtis went home and did something simple. He made himself a sandwich. Then he sat down at his table with no phone, no TV, no book. Just him and the sandwich. He took a bite and chewed slowly. He noticed the textures, the flavors, the temperature. He noticed himself swallowing. He noticed the moment of emptiness before the next bite. He later said that sandwich was the best meal he'd had in 20 years. Not because the food was special. Because his attention was special. This is what the Buddha taught about mindfulness. It's not about what you do. It's about how you do it. Eating can be enlightenment. Walking can be enlightenment. Breathing can be enlightenment. The activity doesn't matter. The attention matters. The monks aren't doing anything special. They're just doing ordinary things with extraordinary presence. Now let me tell you about another meal. This one happened in a church parking lot in Virginia. A group of local Buddhists had organized an offering ceremony. They'd prepared traditional foods. Rice, curries, vegetables, fruit. But as the monks sat down to eat, a homeless man wandered into the parking lot. He was confused, maybe drunk, definitely hungry. He saw the food and started moving toward it. The organizers didn't know what to do. This wasn't part of the plan. But one of the monks saw the man approaching. Without a word, he stood up, took his own bowl, and walked over to the man. He held out the bowl. The man stared at it, then at the monk, then back at the bowl. Slowly, he reached out and took it. The monk bowed and returned to his place, now with no food. The organizers scrambled to find more food for the monk. But he waved them off. He sat in silence while the others ate. Later, through a translator, he said, "He was hungrier than me." That was all. No lecture about generosity. No teaching moment. Just simple, immediate compassion. A monk gave his only meal to a stranger who needed it more. And in doing so, he taught a lesson no words could convey. The homeless man later told a volunteer that he'd never been given anything without being asked for something in return. Not once in his years on the street. People gave him spare change, but they wanted something. They wanted to feel good about themselves. They wanted him to go away. They wanted gratitude. The monk wanted nothing. He just gave. The man said that bowl of rice was the first pure gift he'd ever received. He carried that bowl with him for days afterward, empty now, but still holding something. Still holding the memory of being seen as a human being. This is the walk's deepest work. It doesn't just inspire people who are already comfortable. It reaches the edges. It touches the forgotten. The monks have nothing, so they have nothing to protect. They can give freely because they have no status to maintain, no reputation to guard. They can see a hungry man and respond without calculating the cost. This is freedom. This is what happens when you let go of everything. You become available for anything. Now we need to talk about walking itself. Not as transportation, but as transformation. The Buddha walked for 40 years after his enlightenment. He never owned a home. He never built a monastery. He just walked from village to village, teaching, meditating, walking. For the Buddha, walking wasn't how he got from place to place. Walking was the teaching. There's a specific practice called kankama, or walking meditation. The Buddha taught it in the Kankama Sutta. You choose a path, maybe 20 or 30 steps long. You walk back and forth. You pay attention to each movement. Lifting the foot. Moving it forward. Placing it down. Feeling the ground. Feeling the shift of weight. When your mind wanders, you bring it back to the feet. Back to the ground. Back to now. The monks on this walk are doing kankama on an American scale. Their path isn't a short meditation track. It's 10 states. Their pace isn't slow and deliberate. It's 23 miles a day. But the essence is the same. Attention to each step. Presence with each moment. The journey itself is the destination. Let me tell you about a woman named Eliza who learned this. Eliza is a marathon runner. She's completed races all over the country. She runs for competition, for time, for achievement. When she heard about the monks, she thought, I could do that. Walking is easy. I run 26 miles. Walking is nothing. So she drove to where the monks were and asked to join for a day. She fell in step beside them, full of energy, ready to chat. But no one spoke. She walked for an hour in silence, and it nearly broke her. She later said her mind was screaming. Without music, without podcasts, without conversation, she was trapped with her own thoughts. And her thoughts were not peaceful. They were anxious, restless, judgmental. She realized she'd been using running to escape herself, not to find herself. By the third hour, something shifted. Her mind started to settle. The thoughts became less insistent. She began to notice things she'd never noticed before. The light on the road. The sound of birds between cars. The feeling of her own breath. By the end of the day, she was crying. Not from sadness. From relief. She'd spent 30 years running away, and for the first time, she'd stopped. She'd walked into herself instead of away. This is the psychology of walking meditation. Movement actually helps the mind settle. When the body is occupied with a simple, repetitive task, the thinking mind can relax. It doesn't have to control everything. It can just witness. The rhythm of the feet becomes an anchor. Each step pulls you back to the present. Over time, presence becomes automatic. You don't have to try so hard. You just walk, and walking does the work. Let me tell you about another walker. His name is Father Michael, a Catholic priest from Louisiana. He heard about the monks and felt called to join them for a day. He wore his collar, his black shirt, his cross. He walked beside men in saffron robes, representatives of a tradition his church had once called pagan. They walked in silence together for 6 hours. At the end of the day, Father Michael said something beautiful. He said, "I've been praying my whole life. But I've never prayed like this. Not with words. Not with petitions. Just with presence. Just with steps. I felt closer to God in those 6 hours than I have in years of Massachusetts." He paused, then added, "I think God was in the walking. I think God is always in the walking. We just forget to show up." This is the ecumenical power of the walk. It doesn't require you to believe anything. It doesn't ask you to convert. It just invites you to show up. To put one foot in front of the other. To pay attention. And in that simple act, people from every tradition find their own tradition deepened. Christians find Christ in the silence. Jews find the Shekhinah in presence. Muslims find Allah in the attention. Atheists find peace in the simple fact of being alive. The monks aren't trying to make Buddhists. They're trying to wake up human beings. And walking is their method. Because walking is universal. Everyone walks. Every culture walks. Every religion walks. Walking is the most basic human activity, and when done mindfully, it becomes the most profound. You don't need a temple. You don't need a teacher. You just need a path and the willingness to be present on it. The monks have been present on this path for over 100 days now. They've walked through heat and cold, through rain and sun, through welcome and rejection. And they've kept walking. Not because they're trying to get somewhere. Because the walking itself is the point. Each step is complete. Each step contains the whole path. Each step is peace. And now we arrive at the end. February 13th, 2026. The monks have been walking for 120 days. They've covered over 1,500 miles. They've passed through Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, and finally, Washington, D.C. Their feet have healed and cracked and healed again. Their robes have faded and been mended. Their bowls have been filled by thousands of strangers. The final miles into Washington are different. The procession has grown. Hundreds, maybe thousands of people have joined for this last stretch. They walk in silence behind the monks, a river of humanity flowing toward the seat of American power. There are Buddhists in robes and Christians with crosses. There are veterans in uniforms and children holding hands with parents. There are people who've driven from across the country to be here. There are people who just happened to be on the mall and got swept up in something they don't understand. They walk past the Washington Monument, reflected in the long pool. They walk past the World War II Memorial, where veterans stand and watch, some saluting, some crying. They walk past the Lincoln Memorial, where the great seated figure gazes out over the crowd. And finally, they arrive at the Capitol building. The dome rises above them, white and solid and permanent. The monks stop at the base of the steps. For a long moment, nothing happens. They just stand there. The crowd falls silent. You can hear traffic in the distance, the wind, the breathing of thousands of people. Then the monks begin to chant. The ancient Pali syllables rise up, words that have been spoken for 2,500 years, words the Buddha himself might have spoken. They fill the space around the Capitol. They bounce off the marble. They reach the ears of senators and staffers watching from windows above. The chant is for peace. For all beings. For the end of suffering. The monks chant for the driver who hit them in Texas. They chant for the politicians inside the building, arguing about budgets and borders. They chant for the people in the crowd, each carrying their own burdens, their own hopes, their own fears. They chant for America, this strange and divided country that has fed them and sheltered them and, in some cases, shouted at them. They chant for everyone. When the chanting ends, there is silence. Complete, absolute silence. Thousands of people, not making a sound. Then, slowly, the monks turn and walk away. They don't wait for a response. They don't expect recognition. They don't need anything from this moment. They've done what they came to do. They've walked. They've practiced. They've reminded a nation what peace looks like. Let me tell you about one person in that crowd. Her name is Angela, and she works for a senator. She'd watched the walk online for months, followed the stories, cried over videos of Aloka the dog. She'd begged her boss to come out and meet the monks, but he was too busy, too important, too skeptical. So Angela came alone. She stood in the cold February air and watched the monks chant. And when they finished and turned away, she felt something break open inside her. Angela later quit her job on the Hill. Not because she hated politics, but because she realized she'd been living someone else's life. She'd been chasing someone else's goals. She'd been so busy climbing the ladder that she'd forgotten to ask if it was leaning against the right wall. She moved to a small town in Vermont and started a community garden. She grows food now, and gives most of it away. She tells people she's still in politics, just a different kind. The politics of feeding people. The politics of presence. This is the legacy of the walk. Not a law passed or a holiday declared. Not a headline or a historical footnote. But thousands of small shifts. Thousands of people who walked away different. The banker who cried in Louisiana. The truck driver who gave his socks. The veteran who watched a dog and found peace. The therapist who realized she'd been teaching techniques instead of truth. The chef who finally tasted his food. The homeless man who received a pure gift. The priest who found God in walking. The barber who turned his clippers into meditation. The woman who quit her job to grow food. All of them touched by saffron robes on a highway shoulder. All of them carrying something forward they didn't have before. The monks have returned to their temple now. The highway shoulders are empty again. Aloka is resting. The news cycles have moved on to the next crisis. But the walk continues. It continues in every person who was touched by it. It continues in every small act of kindness inspired by those silent figures. It continues in you, right now, as you sit here listening. Because the question the walk leaves us with is not about them. It's about you. Can you walk 1 mile in silence? Can you eat 1 meal without your phone? Can you give one thing to someone who can never repay you? Can you pause before reacting? Can you let an insult pass without grabbing it? Can you be present, just for a moment, with whatever is right in front of you? The Buddha walked for 40 years and never arrived anywhere. Because he understood that the path is the goal. There is no destination called peace. Peace is the walking. Peace is the breathing. Peace is this moment, right now, as you read these words. The monks walked across America to remind us of something we already know but keep forgetting. Peace is possible. Not somewhere else. Not sometime else. Here. Now. In you. It was always there. You just had to stop stirring the lake long enough to see it. So take a breath. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice the space between thoughts. That's it. That's the walk. That's the peace. And it's been here all along. May you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. And may you walk your own path, one mindful step at a time, wherever it leads you. See you on the next one.